Welcome back to the Deep Dive Learner. So, usually when we explore ancient spiritual texts, there's this built-in expectation of, detachment.
Right, like complete isolation.
Exactly. A popular image is like someone sitting alone on a distant mountaintop, completely devoid of human emotion, just systematically starving their desires to reach this sterile state of enlightenment. We're sort of conditioned to think of spiritual mastery as an escape from the human experience, a retreat into the purely abstract.
Yeah, the assumption is always that to touch the infinite, you have to, strip away everything that makes you human.
Right.
It frames desire and longing as these massive obstacles that have to be eradicated rather than pathways to actually be explored.
Which can feel incredibly alienating. I mean, we are fundamentally wired for connection, right?
Yeah.
For deep, resonant relationships. So when you encounter a text that demands complete stoicism, it often feels like, well, reading a manual for a machine rather than a guide for a human being.
Oh, totally. It's so disconnected.
Yeah, but the source material we're examining today completely shatters that mold. It's just wild. We are looking at a spiritual landscape that is vibrant, intense, and built entirely around the most profound longing you could possibly imagine. We are unpacking a spiritual hymn written by Guru Arjan Dev Ji, specifically referred to as the fifth Mehla, composed in Rag Bilaaval, sections 845 and 846 to be exact.
To fully grasp the weight of this text, we really have to pause on those technical terms because they set the entire emotional stage for this. So in this tradition, Mehla refers to the embodiment of the Guru's light, making Guru Arjan Dev Ji the fifth conduit of this continuous spiritual wisdom. But the musical framework, the rag, that is where the emotional resonance really lives.
Yeah, let's talk about that mood.
Right. So Rag Bilaaval is not just a melody, it's a very specific atmospheric mood. It's traditionally performed in the morning and is intensely associated with deep, profound joy, anticipation, and the lifting of darkness.
Oh, wow. So the music itself is telling you that a sun is about to rise.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how the text takes the most abstract concept possible, connecting with the divine, and grounds it in a deeply human, universally understood metaphor, which is a wedding.
Right, a wedding. And it tracks this evolution of the soul from agonizing separation into an active communal search, and finally into a state of total ecstatic union.
The brilliance of the metaphor lies in its intimacy, I think. A wedding is the ultimate human symbol of merging two separate lives into one shared existence.
Yeah.
By framing the quest for enlightenment as a romantic pursuit, the text is saying that spiritual fulfillment isn't about becoming less human. It's about channeling our most intense human capacities, like love, devotion, yearning toward a permanent target.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way that yearning actually begins in the text is so powerful. Before there's any talk of a ceremony or union, there's just the ache of absence.
Yeah, the waiting.
Right. The text introduces the divine as the Imperishable Husband Lord, and the speaker describes their mind being filled with absolute joy just hearing about this entity, which immediately triggers a very urgent, anxious question. They ask, when shall I realize my great good fortune and meet with my perfect husband?
It's palpable. And the choice of the word imperishable is the linchpin here.
How so?
Well, human relationships, no matter how beautiful or profound or perfect they seem, are fundamentally subject to time.
Right.
They are fragile, they're altered by circumstance, by aging, and ultimately by mortality.
Yeah, that's just the reality of it.
Exactly. So the text sets up this stark contrast between the temporal nature of human bonds and the absolute permanence of the spiritual union. The speaker is aching for a connection that simply cannot be eroded by time.
It's like, learner, imagine the feeling of knowing your absolute perfect soulmate exists out there somewhere. You haven't met them yet, but just knowing they exist makes you desperately want to close the distance. You're practically asking your friends, your companions, for advice on how to find them. And because the target of this longing is permanent, the waiting isn't passive.
Right, you're not just sitting around.
Exactly. If you know an imperishable union is possible, you don't just sit on the couch hoping it finds you. The text says, day and night, I stand and serve my God. How can I attain him? It paints this vivid picture of someone organizing their entire existence around this anticipated connection.
And that phrasing, stand and serve, it indicates a state of perpetual readiness. It's active alignment.
Yeah, they're preparing for it.
Right. The soul is fine-tuning its frequency, clearing out all the distractions of daily life to make space for this ultimate arrival. But what is deeply moving about this early part of the journey is the recognition of a hard limit.
A limit to what they can do.
Exactly. Despite all this active devotion and readiness, The individual effort eventually hits a wall. The speaker asks for mercy, pleading, "Attach me to the hem of your robe."
Oh, that specific image grasping the hem of a robe is incredibly humbling. It signals a shift from trying to earn the union through sheer effort to asking to be, like, pulled along by something greater. The individual realizes that all their standing and serving isn't enough to cross the final chasm.
Yeah, it introduces the mechanism of grace. The soul can prepare the soil, it can plant the seed and water it day and night, but it cannot force the sun to shine.
That's a great way to put it.
The hem of the robe is the acknowledgement that crossing from the finite human experience into the infinite divine requires a hand reaching back from the other side.
Which begs the question, how does that reach actually happen? I mean, when the isolated, agonizing longing becomes too much, how does a person take action? And the text provides a fascinating answer. It doesn't tell the seeker to go deeper into isolation. It points them toward community.
Yeah, the saints.
Right. The narrative shifts, stating, searching, the seeker has found the Lord with the saints.
The environment where the discovery takes place is critical here. Solitary confinement, even for spiritual purposes, can often breed delusion. You get trapped in the echo chamber of your own mind.
Totally. You just hear your own thoughts bouncing back.
Right. The text insists that bridging the gap between the finite and the infinite requires the collective wisdom, the shared vibration of a community, the saints.
And this is where we run into a major philosophical paradox that I want to push back on. Because the text describes the seeker entering this community, meditating with a one-pointed mind, and contemplating the unspoken speech of the Lord.
Yes, the unspoken speech.
But wait a minute. In the same breath, it declares that God is inaccessible and unfathomable, yet claims the seeker has successfully purchased the jewel of the Lord. How can something remain fundamentally inaccessible, yet be found and acquired? And more frustratingly, how do you contemplate a speech that is unspoken?
It does sound like a contradiction.
It sounds like a total oxymoron. By definition, contemplation requires a subject and speech requires a voice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the friction you are pointing out is actually very intentional. Mystical texts use paradoxes to break the machinery of everyday logic.
Okay, break it down for us.
Let's dismantle the unspoken speech first. We navigate our daily reality through verbal communication. We use words to put boundaries around concepts so we can trade them with each other. But the divine is boundless.
Right, you can't box it in.
Exactly. The moment you use a word to describe the infinite, you have placed a limit on it, which means it is no longer infinite. Therefore, the ultimate truth cannot be intellectualized or spoken. It has to be experienced.
Ah, okay. So it's less like listening to a lecture and more like experiencing a physical phenomenon. Think of how a tuning fork operates, right? If you strike one tuning fork, another one nearby tuned to the same frequency will start to vibrate without ever being physically touched. There are no words being exchanged, no visible physical connection, but a profound transfer of energy happens through resonance. You don't hear the speech, you resonate with it.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The contemplation of the unspoken speech is the act of tuning the internal self to match the frequency of the divine. And this brings us to your second challenge, how the inaccessible becomes found.
Right, the jewel that they purchased.
This is precisely why the saints, the community, are non-negotiable in this text. An individual tuning fork might struggle to find that frequency amidst the noise of their own ego. The community acts as an acoustic chamber.
They amplify the signal.
They create an environment of shared grace and kindness. The text explicitly states, "I have met the beloved saints, and they have blessed me with their kindness." The inaccessible nature of the divine remains true for the isolated ego. It's just too vast. But when the seeker is surrounded by the collective resonance of the saints, their mind becomes one-pointed, allowing them to perceive what was previously unfathomable. The jewel isn't something you find under a rock while walking alone. It is realized through the catalytic presence of others who are also tuned to that frequency.
Wow. And once that signal is found and the resonance is achieved, the metaphor transitions to its absolute climax. We move from the anxious search to the wedding day itself.
The big day.
Yeah. The tone shifts dramatically from yearning to absolute, unshakable certainty. The text declares, "The date for my wedding is set and cannot be changed."
The anxiety of the unknown evaporates. There's no more questioning if or when the union will happen. The concept of the date being set introduces a powerful element of divine destiny.
Like it was always meant to be.
It implies that this merging was always going to happen. The soul's journey of longing and searching was simply the process of waking up to an inevitability.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The imagery used for this union is stunning. It's like the ultimate VIP event. The saints, who were previously acting as guides and resident chambers, now form a wondrous wedding party, arriving with poise and grace. It elevates the moment into a cosmic celebration.
It really does.
But the mechanism of the union itself is what stands out the most. The text says, her light blends with his light through and through.
We are seeing the total dissolution of duality here. Up until this moment, there has been a seeker and a sought, a bride and a groom. There was a separation that allowed for longing.
Yeah, a distance to cross.
But in this moment, the boundaries collapse entirely.
Imagine two flames drawing close to one another. The moment they touch, they don't just sit side by side, they merge into a single larger fire.
Right, you can't tell them apart anymore.
Exactly. If you look at that new flame, it is impossible to dissect it and determine which part of the light belonged to the left candle and which belonged to the right. The individual identities are consumed by the shared illumination. And the text makes it clear that this isn't an achievement of the individual ego. It refers to God here as the all-powerful cause of causes.
The individual ego cannot force two flames to merge. It can only bring the candles close together. The cause of causes is the underlying physics that makes the merging inevitable once proximity is achieved.
That's a beautiful image.
And the celebration of this merging is entirely communal. The text notes that everyone present enjoys the nectar of the Lord's name. The saints are not passive spectators in pews, you know. They are intrinsically part of the joy. They facilitated the union, and they share in the energetic output of that merged light.
Which leads us to the critical aftermath. A wedding is a singular event, but a marriage is an ongoing reality.
Yes, the day after the wedding.
All right, what happens when the cosmic ceremony concludes and the soul has to exist in this newly merged state? When the honeymoon phase transitions into eternal daily life, the final stanza explores how this internal union radically alters the perception of external reality. The speaker states, "Beautiful is my home and beauteous is the earth," specifically because God has entered the home of my heart.
It is a profound statement on the subjective nature of reality. The physical dirt of the earth hasn't changed. The architecture of the home hasn't changed.
Sure.
But because the internal architecture of the soul has been flooded with this permanent light, the lens through which the external world is viewed is completely transformed. Everything is rendered beautiful because the observer is fundamentally at peace.
And the text mentions a continuous internal soundtrack playing in this state of peace. It says, "Night and day, the sounds of ecstasy resound and resonate." But to maintain this state, a very specific psychological shift is required, and this is where a lot of modern listeners might hit a roadblock.
I think so, yeah.
The text states, "I have forsaken my stubborn-minded intellect." Now, as a learner, listening to a deep dive analyzing ancient texts, you probably value your intellect highly. It's the tool we use to build civilizations, cure diseases, and navigate our careers. So why is the intellect, this stubborn-minded intellect, framed here as something that must be abandoned or tossed out to hear the sounds of ecstasy? Isn't intellect a good thing?
This raises an important question because a text isn't inherently anti-learning. We have to differentiate between wisdom and the stubborn-minded intellect, which in this context is really just a proxy for the ego.
Okay, so ego disguised as intellect.
Exactly. The ego's primary survival mechanism is control. It wants to categorize, quantify, and predict. It approaches a mystery and essentially demands a spreadsheet. But as we established with the merging flames, the ultimate spiritual union requires the dissolution of boundaries.
The intellect wants to keep the candles separate so it can measure the distance between them.
Precisely that. The stubborn intellect insists on analyzing the heat of the flame rather than allowing itself to be consumed by it.
Oh, wow. Forsaking the intellect here doesn't mean becoming ignorant. It means surrendering the need to intellectually dominate an experience that is inherently beyond logic. The text pairs this surrender with the physical and spiritual act of grasping the guru's feet, which symbolizes absolute surrender and humility.
You're submitting to the experience.
Right. You cannot merge with the infinite while insisting that your finite mind is the ultimate authority. The sounds of ecstasy are always present, but the constant churning noise of an intellect trying to control the universe just drowns them out. When the ego drops its defenses, the resonance finally breaks through.
The arc of this journey is truly breathtaking.
It really is.
So what does this all mean? Guru Arjan Dev Ji maps an incredibly detailed psychological and spiritual progression. We begin with the profound ache of recognizing that temporal things just aren't enough, an active, burning longing for an imperishable connection.
The search for the ultimate partner. Right. And that isolated pain forces the seeker into the community of saints, where the resonant frequency of the unspoken speech can actually be perceived. The journey culminates in a cosmic, predestined merging of light, where the illusion of separation is finally destroyed. And it results in this eternal state of poised awakening, where the ego is surrendered and the world is seen through a lens of profound beauty.
It takes the vast, terrifying concept of eternity and wraps it in the warm, recognizable garments of a love story. It provides a map for the human soul to navigate its way out of isolation and into ultimate integration.
And as we close out this exploration, we want to leave you, the learner, with a new lens to view this ancient wisdom through. We spent a lot of time discussing the surrender of the stubborn-minded intellect and the dissolution of the ego into a larger whole. In our modern, highly secularized culture, we rarely use theological terms like merging with the divine light. But modern psychology has actually documented this exact phenomenon.
It connects so deeply to the psychological concept of flow states, which was pioneered by researchers studying peak human experiences.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, when a musician is lost in a performance or an athlete is perfectly synchronized with a game, they report a complete loss of this self. The inner critic, that stubborn-minded intellect we were talking about, goes completely silent.
It just turns off.
Right. Time distorts, and they feel a sense of merging with the activity itself. They describe a profound, ecstatic joy that only arrives when they stop trying to control the outcome and completely surrender to the process. In our modern world, we're taught to use our intellect to constantly strive, analyze, and problem-solve our way to happiness.
Always grinding.
Yeah, but if this centuries-old text is right, what if true ecstasy and fulfillment don't come from intellectual conquering, but from complete surrender and blending your light with something vastly larger than yourself?
It makes you wonder, if modern neuroscience is recognizing that our highest states of happiness occur exactly when we drop the ego and merge with something outside ourselves, maybe the centuries-old text isn't just poetry. Maybe it's a precise psychological blueprint. How might you approach your own desires and anxieties differently tomorrow if you believed the date for your ultimate peace was already set? What would it look like to stop trying to force the flames together and instead just allow the cause of causes to do its work?
It is a profound shift in perspective, moving from trying to manage the universe to simply resonating with it.
A shift that requires both immense courage and deep humility. Thank you for walking through the atmospheric beauty of Raag Bilaaval with us today. Keep questioning the noise of your own intellect, seek out those resonant communities, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.